Brazilians saw in his play the affirmation of Brazilian values over European, and also popular values over those of the elite. For many people in Brazil, there was no better sight than a 6-foot, blonde, superbly coached and tactically trained European defender on a rigid calorie-controlled diet being made to look like a fool by the devastating artistry of an undernourished and narcic black winger with 2 twisted legs who would have never got past the medical exam in European soccer. That is not a fan on a message board. That is John Humphrey, a respected academic, writing about the greatest dribbler football has ever seen. A boy born with a deformed spine. A boy whose right leg bent inward, whose left leg bent outward, and was 6 centimeters shorter than the other. A boy who, by every law of medicine and logic, should never have become an athlete. And yet, this same boy became the heartbeat of Brazil's greatest teams. The player who, when Pelé fell injured in the 1962 World Cup, carried an entire nation on his crooked legs and delivered its 2nd consecutive title. The first and only player in history to win the Golden Ball, the Golden Boot, and the World Cup in the same tournament. But here is the paradox that defines Garrincha. He was called the joy of the people, Alegria do Povo. He was the angel with bent legs. He brought more happiness to more Brazilians than almost any athlete before or since. And yet, when he died at 49 years old, he was bankrupt. His body was ravaged by alcohol. His liver had failed. He had been in and out of hospital 8 times in his final year. He died in an alcoholic coma, a physical and mental wreck. This is the story of Garrincha, the boy with twisted legs who danced past giants, the genius who gave everything to Brazil and had almost nothing left for himself. Here is what no one was talking about when Garrincha was weaving through European defenses on the world's biggest stage. He was born with a body that rejected the idea of football. Manuel Francisco dos Santos came into the world on October 28, 1933, in the small town of Pau Grande, about 50 kilometers from Rio de Janeiro. His spine was curved. His right leg bent inward. His left leg bent outward, and was 6 centimeters shorter than the right. His sister Rosa gave him the nickname Garrincha, the little bird, because of his small, thin frame. As a child, he wanted to be a carpenter. He worked in a factory. He played football for the factory team, but only because his friends played. When Brazil faced Uruguay in the 1950 World Cup final, the most important match in the nation's history, Garrincha was not watching. He was fishing. When he returned home and found everyone in tears, he could not understand why. In 1953, at 19 years old, Garrincha made a decision that would change his life. He decided to become a professional footballer, not because he loved the game, but because he did not want to work in the factory anymore. Most clubs rejected him. His body was wrong. His technique was raw. His attitude was unprofessional. But then a man named Jonty Cardoso, a player for Botafogo, recommended him after playing against him in a friendly match. Cardoso had seen something that the official scouts had missed. On July 19, 1953, Garrincha made his debut for Botafogo. He scored a hat-trick. The boy with the crooked legs had arrived, and Brazilian football would never be the same. To understand Garrincha's genius, you have to understand what he did on a pitch, and why no one had ever seen anything like it. He was the anti-footballer. In an era when European football was becoming more scientific, more structured, more predictable, Garrincha was chaos incarnate. He had no tactical discipline. He never studied formations. He never watched match footage. He never attended extra training sessions. Garrincha never systematically trained, never had an agent, rarely read contracts because he couldn't read, stayed up all night drinking, never took care of his body, and played only on his innate talent. But on the pitch, he was untouchable. At 1.69 meters, with his crooked legs and slight frame, he would receive the ball on the right wing and begin his dance. Defenders lunged. He glided past them. They lunged again. He stopped, put his foot on the ball, and looked back at the fallen opponent. In the 1958 World Cup match against the Soviet Union, Garrincha dribbled past a defender, stopped, and reached out his hand to help the fallen man back to his feet. He was not trying to humiliate. He was not trying to prove a point. He was having fun. And that joy, that pure, childlike joy, was what made him unstoppable. The 1958 World Cup final against Sweden. Brazil trailed 1-0. Then Garrincha received the ball on the right wing. He dribbled past a defender. He crossed. Vava scored. Before halftime, Garrincha did it again. Another dribble. Another cross. Another Vava goal. Brazil won 5-2. Garrincha was named to the World Cup All-Star team. The world had discovered its new genius. But the greatest moment was yet to come. Let me take you back to the tournament that belonged to Garrincha and Garrincha alone. The 1962 World Cup in Chile. Pelé, Brazil's young superstar, injured himself in the second match. He would not play again in the tournament. Brazil's chances, according to the pundits, had evaporated. But Garrincha did not read the pundits. In the quarterfinal against England, he scored twice. The first was a header, remarkable for a man of his height. The second was a curving shot that the English goalkeeper could only watch, a banana shot that bent through the air before nestling in the corner of the net. Brazil won 3-1. In the semi-final against host nation Chile, the match was brutal. Chilean defenders kicked Garrincha mercilessly. The stadium was hostile. The pressure was immense. Garrincha scored twice. He was sent off late in the match for retaliation, a rare moment of temper that would have disqualified him from the final if the referee had not opted not to include the incident in his official report. After the match, a Chilean newspaper ran a headline that became famous across the football world. What planet is Garrincha from? In the final against Czechoslovakia, despite playing with a fever, Garrincha led Brazil to a 3-1 victory. Brazil was world champion for the second consecutive time. And Garrincha was the undisputed king of the tournament. He won the Golden Ball as the tournament's best player. He won the Golden Boot as the tournament's top scorer with 4 goals. He became the first and only player in World Cup history to win all 3 honors, the Golden Ball, the Golden Boot, and the World Cup, in a single tournament. Pelé had been the star of 1958. 1962 belonged to Garrincha. The boy with the crooked legs had carried Brazil to glory, and the nation would never forget him. Now let me show you the numbers that prove why Garrincha is still considered one of the greatest players of all time. International career: 50 matches for Brazil, 12 goals, 52 wins, 7 draws, 1 loss. That last number is the most important. When Garrincha played for Brazil, his team lost only once. And in that match, against Hungary in the 1966 World Cup, Pelé was not on the field. When Garrincha and Pelé played together, Brazil never lost. Never. Not once. Club career: 581 matches for Botafogo over 12 seasons. 232 goals from the right wing. 3 Rio State League championships, 1957, 1961, 1962. 2 Rio Sao Paulo tournament titles, 1962, 1964. The record that defined his genius. The only player in World Cup history to win the Golden Ball, the Golden Boot, and the World Cup in the same tournament. Named to the FIFA World Cup all-time team in 1994. 7th place in the FIFA Player of the Century Grand Jury vote, ahead of players like Eusebio and Bobby Charlton. Member of the World Team of the 20th century. In 1973, his farewell match between a Brazil side and a World FIFA 11 drew 131,000 spectators to the Maracana Stadium. The world came to say goodbye to the man who had made them smile. But behind the numbers, behind the trophies, behind the joy, a darker story was unfolding. This is where the story turns from triumph to tragedy. Because the same man who brought so much joy to millions could not find joy for himself. Garrincha drank. He drank heavily, constantly, from his playing days through to his final years. His father had been an alcoholic, and Garrincha followed the same path. He drank cachaca, Brazilian sugarcane liquor, by the bottle. He would stay up all night drinking, then go to matches the next day. Sometimes he would arrive at training still drunk from a night before. Sometimes he would not arrive at all. After the 1962 World Cup, his decline began. In 1966, he left Botafogo for Corinthians. He made only 10 appearances. His teammates reportedly refused to pass to him. They believed he was finished. A knee injury slowed him further. He bounced from club to club: Corinthians, Atletico Junior in Colombia, Flamengo, Olaria. He played 5 matches for Flamengo. He played 6 matches for Olaria. By 1972, at 38 years old, he was finished. But the drinking did not stop. On the pitch, Garrincha had been a genius. Off it, he was a disaster. He had at least 14 children, with multiple women. He was married twice, first to Nair Marquez, with whom he had 8 daughters, then to Elza Soares, a famous samba singer. That marriage was turbulent. Garrincha, drunk, struck Soares during an argument. She left him in 1977. In April 1969, he was driving drunk. He crashed into a truck. His mother-in-law was killed in the accident. The joy had disappeared. In its place was only wreckage. February 1980. Rio de Janeiro. Carnival. the Samba school Mangueira, had decided to honor Garrincha. They placed him on top of a float, dressed in his Brazil jersey, hoping that the man who had brought so much joy to Brazil would smile for the cameras. What the nation saw instead was a punch in the stomach. A bloated, ravaged Garrincha, just 46 years old, looked decades older. His eyes were vacant. His movements were slow. He raised an arm to wave to the crowd, a weak, mechanical gesture. The man who had made the world smile could not even smile for his own people. The live broadcast captured his spiral toward oblivion. It was not a tribute. It was an autopsy performed in real time in front of millions. His former Selecao teammates, Nilton Santos and Vava, said in those final years that they would wake every day expecting to receive news of his death. The news came on January 20, 1983. Garrincha died of cirrhosis of the liver. He was 49 years old. He had been hospitalized 8 times in the previous year. By the time of his death, he was a physical and mental wreck. He died in an alcoholic coma, bankrupt, forgotten by many, a shadow of the man who had once danced past the world's best defenders. His body was buried in his hometown cemetery in Mage. But even in death, there was no peace. In 2017, it was discovered that Garrincha's remains had vanished. The cemetery had lost his bones. There was no record of where they had been moved. His daughter Rosangela said, "We don't know for sure where he is. It's very upsetting not knowing where he is." The man who brought joy to millions could not even find rest in his own grave. Here is what I want you to take away from this story. On his tombstone, someone painted a simple message: Aqui descansa em paz aquilo que foi a alegria do povo, Main Garrincha. Here rests in peace the one who is the joy of the people, Main Garrincha. Nearby, another message, scrawled on a wall: Obrigado, Garrincha, por você ter vivido. Thank you, Garrincha, for having lived. Not for the goals, not for the trophies, not for the records, for having lived. The Brazilian philosopher and football writer Eduardo Galeano once said that Garrincha had fun cracking jokes with his legs. That was his genius. He played not to win, not to dominate, not to prove anything. He played because it was fun. And in a world that takes itself too seriously, that is the rarest gift of all. Garrincha was not a role model. He was not a good father. He was not a faithful husband. He was not a disciplined athlete. He drank too much, spent too much, and left behind a trail of wreckage. But when he stepped onto the pitch, he was free. And when we watch his old films, the black and white footage of a tiny man with crooked legs making giants look like children, we are free too. John Humphrey's words captured something essential about Garrincha that no statistic can measure. The sight of a 6-foot, blonde, superbly coached and tactically trained European defender being humiliated by an undernourished and narcic black winger with 2 twisted legs who would have never got past the medical exam, that was not just football. That was justice. That was poetry. That was the victory of joy over structure. Garrincha died broken and largely alone. But his funeral procession, from the Maracana to Pau Grande, drew millions of mourners. Millions. Fans, friends, former players, ordinary Brazilians who had never met him but felt they knew him. Because they did know him. They knew his joy. They knew his pain. They knew that he had given them everything he had, and that, in the end, there was nothing left for himself. So here's my question to you. Was Garrincha the most naturally gifted player in football history? And does his tragic end diminish his legacy or make him more human? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of football's most beautiful and heartbreaking stories, subscribe to the channel for more tales of the players who made this game what it is. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.